Have you ever wondered why a change that you committed to your source code repository, even in a GitOps model, has not reached your production environment? Today I'm here with Matt to answer this question for you and to look at how you can use technical possibilities to make your life easier as a developer when you're deploying stuff in production. So Matt, great to have you on the show.
Hey, Jonas. Yeah, so frequently at my work at least, and I'm sure everyone else can relate to this, there's a lot of times where we're wondering what the hell isn't in production. Especially if you're managing a lot of different repos, you might lose sight of things. So what I did was I created a system that uses event-driven architecture to kind of move things along through the crowd. So I use Bedrock to analyze commit messages as they're going to different environments and creating release summaries. And typically these summaries might include a recommendation whether or not to promote it to production. And then if you're managing multiple projects, you can run a diff command to see what's different between the two environments. So in this case, like this is my actual works diff message, and checking between dev and production, I can see that all of these projects are in sync, and we've continuously deployed from dev to production the same things, but these other projects are missing like a couple commits.
Cool. So this means that with what we're looking at today, we're going to see on the one side an automation that goes into Slack and allows us to control our deployments in Slack and to diff our deployments in Slack. And we're also going to look at how do different environments kind of relate to each other, what the differences are. And we're also going to see how we can use generative AI as part of this to help us take better decisions as part of the deployment, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, I know. And let's try to not spend 3 hours on it. Let's try to condense it and then point people to all of the cool blog posts that you have written around this. So let's get going. Good. I know you for a long time. You are an AWS community builder, and we've been working together. We have met in person already, but a lot of the people on the show will not know you. So can you give us a brief intro into who you are and what makes you Matt?
Yeah. So I'm Matt Martz. I go by Martz Codes on most socials, I guess. We were both AWS community builders. You're an AWS hero now. We met at reInvent a while back. I'm a principal software architect at a company called Definitive. We have an iOS app that helps people save money, and it's like fully event-driven architecture backed. And we use what we're talking about to help with our release management.
Cool. So are you part of an engineering team or of a platform team, or what's your official title these days?
My official title is principal software architect, but at a, I think 13 or 14 person company now, where, maybe half of that, like five people out of that are engineers. Like I wear many hats, so.
I can imagine, but that sounds like great fun and a very cool position for you to be in. Thanks for being on. So let's dive deeper into the topic.
So we can dive deep. We can dive into the architecture. There's a blog post linked in the lower right corner that kind of goes into detail on this. It doesn't specifically go into detail on the diff stuff, but I'm going to write a follow-on post and I'll update the link after the fact. But the overall architecture, I mean, it looks complicated, but it's really just a kind of a pretty standard event-driven architecture where we're relying on EventBridge for a lot of these things. And in fact, this was written back in like July, and since then, step functions have like really upped their game with the things that they can integrate with, including direct Bedrock integrations and step functions. So if I rewrite this, I might step functionize it a little bit more. But the gist is, GitHub emits webhooks for commit messages. You can set it up at a repo specific level, or you can set it up at an organization level. And just looking at like one of my personal projects that I'm using for demo purposes, you could do that by going into GitHub settings, error network, thanks Mac, webhooks, and you can set up the different push notifications and deployment notifications here. And what I'm doing is I'm sending these notifications to an API gateway that's invoking a Lambda. And every time a commit comes in from the main branch, I am basically post-processing that commit, and I'm having Amazon Bedrock summarize it. So it'll take the commit message and like the patch notes, like the diff, actual diff that you would see in like a PR or something. I'm having it summarize it with a prompt that's like, if you were a release manager, would this be safe to go to the next higher environment? And that's what gives us the message that looks like this. It says, this prep for test message gets added, and it says, based on the information provided, there aren't notable differences. And with that sounds comfortable to me. So I'm going to, hit the deploy to test button, which has some approval stuff factored into it. And there's blog posts linked on that. But like that's kicking off the process and continuing to the rest of it.
This click on the button in Slack now sends back an API call to the API gateway again, right?
Yeah, that's a built-in Slack thing. So basically the Slack app is registered in a way that any button push goes to a certain one of these Lambda functions. So the Slack, by pushing the button, it triggers a different EDA flow in this.
Okay.
Yeah. And that in turn, that the Lambda that it ends up invoking has access to a personal access token for GitHub, which kicks off the deployment to the next environment, and the whole process kind of continues.
Cool. What was the main driver for adding this kind of stuff into your CI/CD flow?
At my work, we have, I don't know, probably like 10 different repos that we have right now. And I mean, we do domain driven development. So anytime we're modernizing something, we might create a new domain for something, which means a new code repo. And it was getting challenging managing like the state of everything and making sure that we weren't forgetting to like, oh, I added that feature in this project. I need to make sure it's pushed all the way to production, that kind of thing.
Okay, cool. Makes sense. Yeah, let's go into some more details on some of the stuff. I don't know, where do you want to start?
Yeah. So I can show, so like, for example, this is the DynamoDB table on my personal account, which just has some dummy projects in it. But these are the types of items that we're storing. And basically we're storing them in a format that the commit messages end up getting stored, and actually they aren't here, so that's fun. There should be commit messages here, and that's probably explains why my code wasn't working earlier. And maybe we can take a look at that. But generally, there should be commit messages here, and it would be like a commit hash the SHA with repo type situation. But these are the releases that are getting tracked, and each release is tied to a specific environment, and we're updating like latest items to keep track of like what's the latest thing in that environment. And the next time it's updated, if the item is replaced, then we kind of do a diff and figure out, okay, these are the changes that happened in between these two. And we have the like before and after SHAs for the commits. We use that to query like what was in between them. And by getting what was in between each environment, we can kind of summarize that in a way that's like, hey, there were 6 commits that just got released from test to production. This is what was in that. And it should be fine. It should give you that warm and fuzzy feeling that everything's good.
Okay, maybe then let's have a look on the Lambda function that calls Bedrock, right? And see if we can look at the prompt that we're kind of sending in and the data that goes into that one.
Sure. So in my project, and I don't know if this was easy or not, but I ended up opening all 3 projects in here. I don't normally do that. But the Bedrock prompts are in a Bedrock common file that goes into the Lambdas, and it uses the client Bedrock runtime. And I have it set to limit the tokens to 10,000 at a max size, which would mean each commit that gets processed would cost about 11 cents US dollars. approximately. That, and they've updated prices since I wrote this, so I think it got cheaper. But anyways, I wanted to limit the price. For my work, we process a decent amount of commits, and the whole system ends up costing, I don't know, maybe $10, $20 a month.
Okay.
It's pretty cheap, and there's a lot of stuff flowing through it. But here's an example of a prompt to summarize a commit, and it's like, you are a code reviewer bot that summarizes code commits. Provide a 1 to 2 sentence summary of the commit, and that would be useful for developers and product managers. APIs must be backwards compatible, and I'll make a note on that in a second, which includes path changes. If they are not, it should be highlighted in the summary. In your summary, include analysis of the commit below for bugs and risky or breaking changes. And your response should only be the summary with no lead in. So in practice, this doesn't seem to work very well. I've tried a bunch of variations on that, and I don't know, it's very hit or miss. Sometimes it more frequently than not includes some sort of lead in. The backwards compatible change detection thing, and maybe this is a limitation of Claude, which is what is ultimately processing this stuff. But it wasn't, when I wrote this, it wasn't very good at detecting like what a breaking change is for an API. Okay. For example, in my demo, and I go over this in one of my in the blog post that was linked. I changed an API gateway path resource name, so it would be like /hello to /world. And if that was deployed through production and something was using the /hello endpoint, like obviously that would be a breaking change because endpoint no longer exists. So I don't know. You really have to like kind of massage the prompt continually. And this is my demo prompt. But like you'll need to keep an eye on it. It's not a one-stop shop. Like you still need to keep an eye on the changes. But in practice, it works fairly well. So that's why I added this, which includes path changes part. Like,
yeah, makes sense, because that helps the model to be a little bit smarter and kind of assessing that at the end, right? And the commit information now, is this kind of from GitHub, the diff, so kind of the patch information, or is it the commit messages? Or
yeah, so where did I put that? Commit, that's the interface. So the commit webhook would take that, and it does the commit event, and that would be in event 1, process commit. There we go. So this is what should be putting commits called commit ref in the DynamoDB table, which didn't exist. So there's something wrong here that I can troubleshoot in a bit. But what I'm doing is it's using the GitHub API to get even more detailed information about the commit that's coming in. Because normally, like the webhook only includes maybe the basic message and the author and some basic stuff. But I wanted to get the patch stuff out of it, like the actual like diff.
The code changes itself,
so, yeah. Not all of the files or necessarily, or not even the full files, just the patch. So that's what we're doing with the detailed commit res. And we're basically passing this into Bedrock here through that summarized commit. And that's the prompt that we were just looking at in the Bedrock file. Yeah. So we're building stuff in like, who done it, the file name, the statuses, and any changes, deletions, etc.
Cool. Looks good. And then this goes into Bedrock. Bedrock gives a result, and the result is then added to the DynamoDB table, which is then shown on Slack, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. For some reason, there seems to be an error in this Lambda, which if you want us to troubleshoot, we can look at that quickly to see if it's something easy.
Yeah, let's try it. Let's give it like 5 minutes, something like that.
Sure. So yeah, this is the process commit Lambda. If I go into the Lambda console, says commit. So I'll go to the monitor tab, and I mean the Lambda is definitely erroring, so that's
good. That means we know we're looking at the right spot.
Right.
You need to look at this from a positive angle, you know?
Yeah. So these are from today, and yeah, cannot read property of undefined. Cannot read length.
Maybe because there is no change in the.
I mean, there should have been in that case. What are we reading the length of? Body.commits? Maybe. Yeah, that's the only thing with the length property on it. So body.commits, body event detail. I'm logging the event detail data. Oh, I bet I know what this is.
No, I'm curious.
Well, maybe not. So here's the event detail data. And all right, so what are we looking at? Body.commits. So there should be commits in there, but they're buried under commit event. So that should be an easy fix, actually. Body.commit event. And everything is in that, right? Yep. So I'm just going to do that. Should be good.
And this okay, you're deploying locally now, right?
So the cicd project isn't, since it typically only lives in like one AWS account, I typically just laptop deploy it. But the rest of the projects, so like architectural wise, at least the way I set it up at work is we have like an infrastructure AWS account, which would host like something like this. And then we have our dev test prod accounts. So this project would orchestrate the other three accounts effectively. That it makes it a little simpler because you only have to put your GitHub tokens in a secret in one account. Like it doesn't need to be in every single account.
Yeah.
And the same with the Slack tokens, stuff like that. So with these changes in, can I pop channels out? Nope. Okay, so a little too early for that actually. So let's change Lambda.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, time zones and so, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to change something in the CI/CD. This means we're going to force the Lambda function to be executed because we're pushing something to the GitHub repository, right? And that is going to trigger that whole event-driven architecture stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I say that, but I deployed the wrong project. I don't normally operate with. Normally, when I open repos in VS Code, I do one VS Code window per project, but for ease of recording, I added them in together.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But I just deployed the CI/CD project.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
Awkward. Yeah. So yeah, whatever. I guess I'll shut up for a second, and you can cut this part out.
Oh, we just leave it in, and you tell us a secret story, Matt. What about that? Tell us something secret about you while we're waiting.
Oh, I don't have any secrets.
So you're fully transparent always.
Fully transparent always. Yeah.
Who
for better or worse.
Who knows more about you? What's that name? The guy that bought Twitter, or the guy that has Facebook and stuff like that?
I'm not really on Twitter much anymore.
What are you using these days?
I guess LinkedIn. I don't know. I'm kind of bummed out on the whole social media thing.
Yeah, we even had Vlad coming to LinkedIn now. That was interesting. He has been not using LinkedIn for the last 10 years or something like that, or whatever, but he came back to LinkedIn a few weeks ago. I don't know.
LinkedIn has been pretty popular lately.
I think it's just
Anyways,
too many different socials these days. I don't know what to focus on, to be honest.
Yeah. So okay, now that bug should be fixed, we should be tracking commits in DynamoDB and everything else, and we'll verify that in a second. But I pushed a new commit out, so the GitHub webhook commit should have fired, which means this event process commit also should have fired. And 1031, yep, it just did, and there's no errors. And like so, the summary message from Bedrock, for example, says this commit by Martz codes modifies a console log message in the dummy TS file. Does not appear to contain any bug fixes, risky changes, or breaking API changes.
Yay! So fire it off to production would be the decision on this one.
Yeah. And then if we look at here, so yeah, there's a commit from the cicd example project that was from this date and time. So that's the commit I just did. So it's tracking in DynamoDB. And if we look at Slack, that was from earlier. So yeah, there in a second there should be a thread on here, hopefully, that includes the summary. And before, what it looked like was this. Like, unfortunately, without any commit details, I cannot provide useful release summary, and that's because the commits weren't there. And now there seems to be another failure.
And now this actually, this deployment piece, the deployment link that you see over there, is gonna be pointing at GitHub.
Yeah. So yeah, this goes to GitHub.
Okay.
So I can open that up, and like this was the CI/CD pipeline that did the actual deployment to dev. And the thread did end up popping up. It took a second. Okay. It's actually summarizing things twice, and in dev it ends up being like the same thing. But when you're going to like from test to prod, for example, and you haven't deployed to prod in a while, and there's a backlog of commits, what the system does is it takes all of the commit summaries and it summarizes the summaries. Yeah, so so this is the commit summary that came through for that. And the way it works in higher environments, like it, for example, in test, when you might not, I mean, I recommend deploying frequently through all the environments, but if you say gather a few commits worth of things in test before going to production, or maybe you find some bugs and you fix some bugs or whatever, you'll end up having multiple commits worth to process to make that recommendation to go from test to prod. So what the system does is it actually, like when it's preparing that, it takes the commit summaries that were generated for each commit, and then it summarizes all of the summaries. So we're not refetching like the patch notes or anything like that for all of the commits. We're just like summarizing the summaries. So
that's then taken from DynamoDB, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they're all taken from DynamoDB. So here, like in this specific dev release, there was one commit, and dev will pretty much always have single commits in its release summaries, but going from test to prod might have multiple.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's the commit, and then it has the prep for going to the higher environment, and this is where it would normally like recommend whether or not to do it, or if it has breaking changes, things like that.
Cool. Yeah, great. How do you think, or how much do you think has this helped you and the teams to save time in deployments?
I think it's helped a lot. The messages aren't always the best. Like the summaries from Bedrock aren't always the best, but like they give you a good gist. And I think that's enough just to like relieve some of the burden. Like I think the big game changer is having the buttons and like having one place to manage all that stuff, so you're not bouncing between projects.
Okay, so that means at the end, the everything in one interface is what helps more than the summary itself.
Yeah, the diff, the environment diff is kind of the bigger thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like this makes it a lot easier to like at a glance see, okay, we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects that are in sync and prod.
Okay.
And we have 4 projects that aren't, and this is what's different between all of them. And I mean, in this case, it's all single commits, but like there could be multiple
Mm-hmm.
commits in each of these, and you could get a sense like, oh, we haven't released prod in 2 weeks. Like there's a lot of stuff that needs to go in.
That means that you can essentially also now add something like an event that if you didn't release to prod for like 7 days, it would fire off a Slack message that reminds you of pushing to prod, right?
Right. Yeah, you can trigger different things based on that, like EDA wise, event driven architecture wise, and like even looking at this, like this should probably work now. Clearbot diff dev prod. This is usually fairly quick because there's only 2 projects. So like this is what it should look like for having a commit, right? And there should be a list of commits here. Like this one, we didn't push a new commit since fixing that one change. But these links here,
Mm-hmm.
this is the diff between the 2 environments.
Oh, cool. That helps also. So you can directly
Right.
compare them. And it works based on tags or branches?
I mean, this is all focused on like
or commits.
your main
So
branch.
hashes.
So we use trunk-based development. So
yeah, makes sense. So it works on commit hashes at the end. It doesn't really use any tags or branches on that.
Yeah, I mean the URL is just straight the before and after SHAs. That's it.
Cool. Great. So I think at least I covered everything I wanted to cover, Matt. What did I miss? What did we miss to look at?
I think that's probably the important stuff. So I do plan on writing a blog post on the actual diff portion. The blog posts that I have now are focused on kind of the Bedrock portion of summarizing everything. But my next step is the diff post, and honestly, I'd love to add in a feature to the Slackbot that once you get the diff, that you can just sync up environments. So you can, in my actual work example, it'd be nice to have a button here that was like, okay, push all of that stuff to prod. And then I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds like a great addition. What else are you planning to do next with this project? Is it completely open sourced anywhere? Are you planning to open source it or not? What's your take on that?
I mean, the code is very similar to what I have in my work project, and it's just this.
Okay.
So it's on my personal, and then it's linked from the blog post, but it's blog cicd Bedrock releases. And I've pushed the diff stuff here. I just haven't written the blog stuff associated with that. If people want to learn more about event-driven architecture, Matt Morgan and I did a course on Free Code Camp for event-driven architecture on AWS. So I'd recommend checking that out too.
Cool.
And I do all my stuff in CDK, and I have a CDK course on there also.
Cool. So let me add that to the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else that you think we would like to present today? Anything that keeps you excited here in doing this kind of stuff?
I don't think so. I mean, this stuff, at my work at least, where we're managing like 10 projects, like it's been a lot of help, and it's all built on like native kind of processes. I haven't integrated it into my work yet, but I've written blog posts on using native AWS service events to create like event-driven documentation. So that would be maybe something else to check out, but like that's beyond the scope of this. But these 2 blog posts here talk about the Slack ops kind of side of GitHub Actions with CDK.
Cool, thanks. Matt, this has been once again, as always, great and also a great fun. I really enjoy doing technical stuff with you, right? This is amazing. And keep up your blog posting, because I already learned a lot through all of your posts, and I think I told you last time we talked, I'm eager to see more.
Yeah, Yeah, love coming on your channel.
And
thanks for having me.
Looking forward to see you hopefully again soon, anytime. And yeah, thanks a lot. Bye bye.